Hello and welcome to my channel. As I'm sure if you are a returning subscriber you've noticed, my channel is now monetized and has a community tab. I just posted a comment on my community tab, so please feel free to respond to it at some point this week if you're interested. If not, that's perfectly fine. But thank you nonetheless for being here, for watching, subscribing, engaging, commenting, liking, disliking, whatever tickles your fancy. And let's get into this video. So the School of Life just uploaded I think yesterday uploaded a video titled How to Love Your Work, and I thought it would be interesting to just react to it because I watched it and was quite, I wouldn't say taken aback, but skeptical of its message or what I interpreted it as saying. So let's give it a watch.
In a perfect world, when it came to choosing an occupation, we would have only two priorities in mind. Firstly, to find a job that we enjoyed, and secondly, to find a job that paid us enough to cover reasonable material needs. But in order to think so freely, we would have to be emotionally balanced in a way that few of us actually are. In reality, when it comes to choosing an occupation, we tend to be haunted by three additional priorities. We need to find a job that will pay not just enough to cover reasonable material expenses, but a lot more besides. Enough to impress other people, even other people we don't like very much.
I think this is inevitable because we live in societies, we live in collectives. If we were just individual atoms experiencing life, then it wouldn't matter. But everything we do is for other people. I strongly believe that. I believe that very little of what we do is in fact for ourselves. And I use the sort of thought experiment of, if you woke up one morning and you found that you were the only human being left on Earth, everybody else had just vanished entirely, what would you do? Would you put on makeup? Would you get dressed? Would you even shower? Would you do the things? Would you eat healthily? Would you do the things that you regularly do, which a lot of, I think, our mainstream narrative claims that we do in honor of self-love and we do for just you? I don't believe that we do hardly anything for ourselves. I think even this notion of self-love and putting yourself first, it's all done in the context of society, and I think inevitably we are conditioned and socialized and subservient to society, I believe. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. So from the outset, I was critical of this.
We also crave to find a job that will allow us not to be at the mercy of other people, whom we may deep down fear and distrust.
Again, I think that this is just a modern phenomena. I think that because we are far better educated, and I think especially the audience of the School of Life are mainly sort of millennials, Gen Zers, relative to previous generations, we're far better educated. We are living in a sort of financial market in which careers demand sort of specialisms, and you have to specialize in something. And specializing means that in order to gain any sort of, I guess, recognition or to establish any sense of meaning, you have to compete with other specialists in your field. And at the same time, I think within our context, organized religion has declined, especially among our age group. I mean, I know in the United States, even though only about 10% of the US are atheist, among 18 to 29-year-olds, it's 40% of individuals identify as atheist, and among the 30 to 47 bracket, it's 37%. I read that somewhere a few days ago. Identify as atheist, basically. So, sorry, I'll clarify that with a little gobbet at the bottom. But I think that that is important because I think the key factor of organized religion was that it undermined sort of the existential crisis which many people go through as a consequence of sort of realizing that there's sort of no God or what have you. And I do believe in essence that we do like to be told what to do, whether that be from an identity which we subscribe to, which we identify with, whether that be from religion, whether that be from our sort of spiritual awakening. We all look for that sort of authority that gives us meaning and direction and purpose. So again, I disagree with this point. And I think work is the same. I think it depends on the job specifically, but I do think that we look for direction and we look for meaning.
And we hope for a job that will make us known, esteemed, honoured, and perhaps famous, so that we will never again have to feel small or neglected. Needless to say, these 3 additional requirements make working life hugely more complicated and unhappy than it would otherwise have needed to be.
I think why it's difficult to find or to discover and determine what to do for a lot of people, and I include myself in this, is because our society, this sort of modern gig economy, does not correspond to modern mass education and even to sort of the trajectory of going to school for 18 years, sitting in a classroom. All of that is it's very much associated with sort of a very totalitarian way of educating individuals. It is quite bizarre that it is so revered and so esteemed a form of doing schooling now, when everything else has changed and when the job market in no way correlates or corresponds to the ways in which we are educated currently. So again, I think a lot of the not knowing what to do is because most individuals are just not put in a position where they are able to expose themselves to the real world whilst they are stuck in the very unrealistic world of education and everything that it has to offer. So I disagree with that as well. I think this is just going to be me disagreeing with everything that is said, but alas.
No wonder we may get stuck choosing what to do. Rather than being able to focus on the jobs that we are passionate about and that we would intrinsically enjoy, we have to twist our natures to appease extrinsic imperatives. There is no way that we could, for example, work as a kindergarten teacher, a psychotherapist, a carpenter, or a cook. Our psychological drive to impress, to have power over others, and to be known to strangers preclude such relatively modest choices from the outset.
I find that very reductionist, very simplistic, and not really looking at sort of the real depth that goes into why people choose jobs. A remarkable thing with the gig economy is that a lot of people can also move from job to job. Not necessarily a good or bad thing, but nonetheless a thing and an attribute. You're not in the same job for the rest of your life. So I don't think that explanation actually relates all that convincingly to the lived experience of the audience watching this.
The state of our psyches means that we have to aim for far more stellar careers, even in fields we really don't much like, and may have to work much harder than is good for our health or our families. We are prone to be constantly panicked because the bar for failing is so much higher. A slight wind of disapproval from the public might be experienced as appalling. A bit less money than the astronomical sum we made last year will register as fateful. Under pressure, we may make unwise and hasty moves. We might cut corners, involve ourselves in risky schemes, and not give our work the time and calm it needs.
Right. This was another point that I was a bit dissatisfied with, in that it assumes a very highly concentrated level of individualism. The idea that in everything that we think, live and breathe, we are instantaneously thinking, what is the public thinking about me? And I don't believe that that occurs in as concentrated or as conscious a form as this video is suggesting. When I think of risky schemes, I think of not just sort of white-collar crime. I think of also individuals who are victims of or falling into MLM schemes. I wouldn't say that a lot of people go into MLM schemes because they're looking for recognition or they're looking for approval. I would say that they go into MLM schemes in order to make, money, in order to make an income. And I think a lot of that income is based more so on familial needs, not necessarily just familial expectations, but also just basic needs of food and clothing.
What would enable us to make the right career choices is something that seems, on the face of it, to have nothing to do with work at all. Love. A profound experience of love in both childhood and adulthood. A child who is properly loved is a creature who doesn't need to prove itself in any significant way.
Again, what is the right career choice? I feel that that's quite difficult because for a lot of people, the right career choice is making a lot of money. And that may not, in sort of a normative sense, be the right career choice because it merely reinforces great social inequalities. It merely reinforces our society's obsession with money and making and accumulating money. So I don't really understand what is meant by this idea of the right career choice, whether we're talking about the right career choice for you as an individual or the right career choice for the social sphere. And I think it's very important to consider that because we are inevitably individuals within society. We influence society, it influences us. It's sort of this continual cycle of influence and interdependence that I don't think can be ignored. The idea that love is that from which making the right choices in one's future life stems from, I'm not inclined to give that much significance. And I don't think that careers or the world of work was created or fashioned with the objective of individuals being able to find the right career for them. Societies and social institutions and the careers within them were created in order to stop people killing each other and to prolong life. It's better to be in communities than it is to be on your own. We have security in societies, similarly to how we have securities in jobs. I don't think those jobs care enough or were in any way founded on caring enough about whether one is in the right or the wrong career. As long as you do the career, that's all that really matters. So I'm not terribly convinced by this argument either.
It doesn't have to excel at school, dazzle acquaintances, or shore up a parent's fragile sense of esteem. It may do well at school anyway, but because it enjoys the work, not because it has to boost a parent. It can find its way to its own pleasures. It doesn't need to amaze, because it's special enough just by existing.
I don't really watch The School of Life, but I think this places a lot of blame on everybody else except the person themselves. I think a lot of parents show their love by pushing their children, by encouraging them, by being disappointed when their child does not do the best that they could do at something. I mean, no parent is perfect, and no child is going to be raised in the very idealistic way that this yellow-dressed child is being presented as. I mean, parents are screw-ups, I can imagine, for everyone. And to then blame a child for choosing the wrong career on sort of their upbringing and their exposure to this very specific take on what constitutes nurturing love is, I think, quite bizarre.
It may end up working extremely hard, but it will do so because it is passionate, not because it craves applause. It can concentrate on doing a job very well while unimpeded by any worries as to whether it will be known in 100 years or to people in another city. It can potter away in obscurity, deriving gratification from the business at hand.
A lot of people who've had a very positive upbringing have been very well nurtured and supported by their parents and their siblings and their surroundings. They then go into a world where that just doesn't exist, where that doesn't feature.
So, how does this upbringing, cushioned in love down the path of unashamed self-confidence, prepare them for the harsh realities of the world of work, which doesn't coddle or particularly care about your individuality and feelings? How then can you love your work?
An experience of adult love further enhances the sense of security we need. When someone properly loves us, their patience, concern and tenderness make us feel rooted and welcome on the earth. It doesn't really matter if no one knows who we are and if there's very little left over at the end of the month. Two people who are in love will be happy to sleep on a park bench, wrote D.H. Lawrence, an idea which may not be literally true, but which conveys well enough what room for manoeuvre love gives us in relation to our material priorities.
I always think of that song by Justin Bieber, that song, As Long As You Love Me, we could be starving, we could be homeless, we could be broke. And I think, no, love is not enough. I don't feel that love is enough to generate such things. I don't feel that love can sustain sort of people having to sleep on a park bench. I think another factor is that a lot of the seeming love that one can get from their work derives from the fact that you sort of are able to practice, at least in the Aristotelian sense, craftsmanship, and you're able to perfect throughout the days of your life this craftsmanship and cultivate sort of doing something well. I think nowadays individuals actually cannot really find any attachment or meaning to their work. I, for example, where I work, in the mornings have to make everything look a certain way, and I hate it to the bottom of my core when our shop opens and these customers come in and they just wreck everything. And I hate it because I have invested my time, my labor, my, even in a sense, love into making something which is then not valued in any way by a customer for obvious reasons. They come, they take, they destroy, they make it look awful again. And we just continue this cycle every day, day in and day out. And a consequence of that is that I don't gain satisfaction from my work. I stop loving my work. And I think a lot of work nowadays is like that. A lot of work, because it's so specialized, because it's in sort of the service economy, where do you find love of what you work? How can you find love and meaning in it?
It follows that when people crave power, fortune and fame, it isn't greed that's driving them, but an anguished feeling of being unloved, for which we can feel enormous compassion. They may look like winners, they are in reality unhappy victims.
Is Trump an unhappy victim? Are all politicians, career politicians, unhappy victims? Is having an incredibly inflated ego a consequence of being a victim? I don't know. I really don't know.
Excessive achievements are the legacy of an emotionally damaged sense that it isn't enough just to be. It may have become second nature to us to try to fix emotional wounds through our career choices and exploits. We may not even realise what we're up to. We should dare to ask, what might I have done with my life if I had felt properly loved from the start? And we may have to acknowledge, with tears in our eyes, how different our path would have been.
What does this mean, a lack of love? Somebody who is loved by every member of their huge extended family, who has a wife, what have you, who has all these networks of familial love, of love in friendships, may still, in many cases, feel unloved or feel lonely. Are they selfish? Are they self-absorbed? No. How do you measure what enough or sufficient levels of love are? I keep saying this. I think this is very simplistic, a very simplistic way to look at work and why people don't love work or do love work, and reducing it down to, or sort of this very Freudian sort of blame the parents for insufficient love or what have you. I think it just establishes a sort of very unhelpful and very universal sort of victim narrative around why you may not love your work. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think love solves everything.
How many genuine ambitions we sacrificed in the name of shoring up a sense of acceptability we should have had from infancy. The most astonishing career achievements will never compensate anyone for the lack of love they've suffered. Work cannot fix a deficit of love. We should enjoy work on its own terms, and in another part of our lives, mourn and seek redemptive substitutes for the love we originally lacked.
I think it also assumes that love is something easy to find, and it really isn't, especially in later life and especially in today's world and context of online dating and how that very much isn't based on love. Divorce rates are at an all-time high. People are dating and breaking up every second of every day. It's a mad, mad world of love out there. I think, again, you have to define what love is. I mean, love is so many different things to so many different people. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Feel free to subscribe, to like, dislike as you feel fit. And I would love to hear, again, what you have to say. I'm very interested in hearing what anybody has to say about anything and everything. So please feel free to use the comment section. And I will see you in the next one.